And welcome back to Michigan Matters. We're now joined by David Dulio, who's the director of Open University's Center for Civic Engagement and also a poli-sci prof there. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Carol. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Well, let's dive right in because, boy, there's so many things going on here. We had the anniversary of the January 6th insurrection. Joe Biden gave a fiery speech. And I'm curious your thoughts as someone who has a long view of this, the impact on that here in the lands here in the Rust Belt states with Republicans and Democrats alike.
Sure. I think that the president's speech to mark the January 6th anniversary is really another in what seems to be a pretty typical American politics happening these days, which is to just maybe firm up the divisions that are present in the nation and our state, right? I mean, I think we have to remember that and he certainly did give a fiery speech and forcefully took on the role of President Trump in what occurred on January 6, 2021. But we have to remember that Donald Trump got 74 million votes nationwide, and he got 2.6 million votes here in Michigan. There are still a number of people, millions, who are supporters of his and who will back, sort of his vision of what happened that day.
Yeah. Well, and there's little doubt, too, that Donald Trump spent a lot of time in Michigan. In fact, not only 2016, but in the 2020 race, Michigan was a state that seemed to embrace him. So there'll be much more to say about that. But let's talk about some of the races going on this year in Michigan, 2022, the governor's race. Gretchen Whitmer has raised tons of money. There's a host of Republicans who are lining up against her. How do you see that race evolving?
Well, I think right about now is when we'll start to see that Republican primary begin in earnest, right? I mean, we've got a number of interesting candidates, whether it's former chief of Detroit Police Department, James Craig, Mr. Rinke, the car dealer, folks from the West Side might are in it. The question is, how much money are those folks raising to be able to compete not only with one another, but then have left over to take on the governor in the general election? Does anybody else jump in the race in the spring? I think that could shake things up. Once we get past filing day, that's when we can probably better start to handicap what's going to happen in the Republican primary.
And money is the mother's milk of politics, as we all know. So let's talk about the congressional redistricting process that has gone on here. And boy, talk about changing things. And it seems like there's more Democrats being pitted against current Democrats. And how do you see overall when the dust settles, how it's going to shake out?
Well, that's really the big question is when and how does that dust settle? I think there's no question we're going to see court cases and probably any number of court cases filed and have to be adjudicated on not just the congressional map, but the state House and state Senate map, too. And I think, at least from the congressional perspective, right, we do have a number of intra-party battles or potential intra-party battles that could happen, most notably with Representative Stevens and Representative Levin over in Southeast Michigan, but also maybe Representative Upton and Representative Huizenga in West Michigan. Those will be incredibly interesting to watch. I think, we're likely to have a pretty evenly split as much as you can have it when it's an odd number of 13 congressional districts now, a pretty evenly split congressional delegation.
And how do you see Representative Peter Meijer, who was one of the Republicans that voted to impeach Trump, speaking of Donald Trump, and the fallout on him and the race and what he does? How do you see that playing out?
Sure. The district where he's going to run is going to be a lot of new territory for him. It'll be areas that he's not represented, at least in Congress previously. It's a district that runs from Grand Rapids all the way up toward Muskegon. And I think that it's going to be a district that leans Democratic in many ways. And in fact, that might end up being a help to him in some regard, where he can tout his anti-Trump bona fides and really make a case that he's this moderate, pragmatic member of Congress. I don't think there's any question you'll see a Republican primary challenge to him. And it just is, what does that race look like when all of the folks that get in it are in it.
Yeah, well, there's so much more to say. Unfortunately, so little time. So,
Right.
David, thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, Karen.
You take good care. And we're back with more Michigan Matters after a quick timeout.